I'm Rachel Alday, and this is the Hospitality Break Room, a podcast full of nuggets and secret sauce, where every Monday we'll shed light on what we've learned from the countless mistakes we've made along our journey in the chaotic and rewarding world of vacation rentals. Hi, I'm Rachel Alday, and welcome back to the Hospitality Break Room. We're sitting actually in the break room, as we always are, and I'm here with Brad, who has worked with Abode for 9 years. Brad started evenings and weekends operations, right?
I think even just doing my regular property inspections and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, inspections is how he
2014,
started,
so.
right? He was here like as a ski bum in Park City, I think, right?
Transitioning out of that, yeah.
Transitioning out of a ski bum, and he was like wanting more. And then once he started working with us, my husband Rob and I were like, oh, Brad's really smart. And we knew that, he could do a lot more. And so over the years, he's transitioned through a few different roles, but really like revenue management type focus. And so currently Brad is a director over our sales team and also our homeowner relations, right?
Yes.
And but he has like tons of experience in revenue management and just like I feel like your brain, I always tell this to Brad, and this is so weird of me, but like Brad's brain just like thinks of things differently than mine does. And so he always has like commentary or ideas that are to me like really smart and something I would have never thought of. And also like the way that Brad looks at data is always something that I would have never thought to look at it that way. And so it's been really, really helpful. So I feel like Brad's going to be full of nuggets and secret sauce today because number one, he's been in the business for a long time. He's been in a bunch of different areas of the business. And he has this really cool, like data analytical mind, I think. Am I saying that right? Like, am I saying that wrong? Do you agree with that?
For better or worse, I've seen a lot of streamline and key data and all that. So it just, the patterns repeat themselves over time.
I would say you are a streamline, for sure, a streamline expert in key data. Yes. Okay. So we're going to go over just some points Brad and I kind of discussed in advance, like what the kind of nuggets we were going to talk about, but then we're going to let this be pretty free form so that he can share all the good stuff. So I think we were going to start by talking about the concept of the amenity filter and like how that works with our business and what your personal experience is and stuff you could share with other people.
Sure. Yeah. So I think there's like from a homeowner, if they're say wanting to do a moderate upgrade, so $10,000 to $25,000 pouring into their property, there's a lot of things as an owner is going to sound really great. An espresso maker, nicer thread count sheets, maybe a higher end sofa, things like that. Those will all photograph great. In the long run, they might help with reviews.
Yeah.
But when somebody's shopping for the property, it's never going to show up, unfortunately. And so it's like in our market, there's still properties that don't have air conditioning. So if people add many split air conditionings, that is a huge revenue gain. You'll probably gain it back in the first year. And then there's still a few properties that have space for hot tubs. They don't add them yet. That's also like in a ski market. It's like having a pool.
Yeah.
And so it's the easiest way to just drive your booking. Because I know we had a property this year where they were doing construction. So the hot tub was removed from the listing for about a year. And then we turned it on about 6 weeks ago. And we've had like 4 bookings already.
So much more inquiries.
That one. And then on the lower end price point, like if you just upgrade rooms that have queens or doubles to kings, that's like an easy one because most adults prefer the king.
This is like my number one thing. I always tell if a homeowner asks me, what should we do to our house? If their house was really nice, I used to tell them like, no, you're fine. You don't have to do anything. But now if they have any queens, I'm always like, okay, there should be no queen, like all kings. And if anything else, there's a bunk room. And people fight us on this for sure. But I totally agree with you. Brad had like written up some possible like nuggets for us to share today. And this amenity filter to me strikes such a chord because so often I'll talk to homeowners and they're talking about their sheets. They'll be like, they want to talk about the thread count sheets that they want to offer to the guests. And they'll be kind of like leery of and we do a linen program here at Abode and we do pretty high quality commercial linens, but they're not like, the frette or fret linens. And so we'll have homeowners that really want to offer that to their guests, which I think is cool. But it's such a good point, the way Brad put it, which is, and this is the nugget here, like when you're looking to do upgrades or when you're talking with a homeowner to do some sort of upgrade to amenities or offerings within a property, it's really good to think about, is it one of those things you check a box for? Like when you're looking to book a property when you're going on VRBO, Airbnb, or a website like a vacation rental company's website? Is it one of the things you enter along with your dates? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? And then is it a
And then
checkbox?
VRBO is pretty good about making like whatever's popular in the market. Like in a ski market, the hot tubs is going to be the most recommended, or air conditioning. So
totally,
there's things like your property's just not going to show up if you don't have air conditioning in the summer.
I always tell homeowners that, because personally, I despise hot tubs. There could be a whole episode about why I hate hot tubs so much. But I think if you've been in the vacation rental industry for very long and you're any market, I can't think of a market that wouldn't be hot tub heavy. But
I mean, I would say probably go with a pool over a hot tub in a really warm market, but anywhere else.
Yeah, but I always tell homeowners, I hate hot tubs. They're disgusting. Hot tubs, here's a nugget. Hot tubs are people soup. Think about it, everyone. Hot tubs are human stew. They're disgusting. They're just water that doesn't get changed out, not during the
23 hours a day, no fresh air is getting in there. So.
It's closed off and people sit their bodies in it and stew in it. And they like that. And if you ever look at a hot tub filter, anyway, I hate hot tubs. And I just was talking to a homeowner in Sun Valley, and it was a homeowner, and there's a family, and they own multiple properties, and they have really cool properties, and it was great. And we were talking about hot tubs because they were not into hot tubs personally as a family. And I was like, but you gotta get it, because if you don't, VRBO and Airbnb will disappear you basically from listings, because people are going to check that box. And then if you don't have that amenity, then no one's going to find you. And so I think that's so important, right? So this nugget is when you're talking with homeowners about upgrading linens, the espresso machine, the bedding, anything like that, it is so important. And maybe this is something we should teach our team to do, actually, if they're not already doing it, which is to be able to go online during a meeting with a prospective homeowner and show them the boxes that people check when they're booking on VRBO and Airbnb, to be see, this is what people are checking. So that's why we're focusing on, these are the things that you would want to put your money towards to upgrade. So it's when you're making all these decisions, and even if the homeowner's preference is fancy sheets or a fancy coffee maker, it's look, this is what the check boxes are. And if they don't already have a hot tub, put the money there, because that's going to bring you more revenue. That is so that's such a good point.
And it doesn't show up in the pictures either. You can't, how do you express fancy sheets?
Yeah.
Or a nice sound system? It's it's very hard. But if you're the hot tubs in a picture, it's
well, and I'm all about that whole, up leveling of the experience, the unreasonable hospitality of taking it above and beyond. And I think fancy sheets are part of that. But when you're talking about a property that you want to create revenue with, and if it's a homeowner who will be coming to you every year talking about why is my revenue at this level? How do I get it to the next level? It's then their spend does need to fall into the categories that the guest is making their selections based on, and not just the above and beyond. The above and beyond, linens or an espresso maker, to me, that's after you already did the hot tub, the grill, all that kind of stuff.
That's going to drive the repeat business.
Yes.
But you have to get the people through the door in the first place.
Yeah. So, and I feel this is kind of obvious, but I don't think I've discussed it this way before. So that's why, to me, this is one of those nuggets that is just, this is so Brad too. It's just a different way of looking at things that makes you oh yeah, I kind of knew that, but I didn't think about it that way. And I wasn't making decisions based on those ideas because I wasn't thinking about it that way. And now I could make decisions based on that, which we could help our homeowners to do the same. So, and that's awesome.
Great.
Okay. What's another one?
I think another approach we have just from managing our calendars is for Park City, Jackson Hole, and Sun Valley are a little different, but Park City is this middle of December to the end of March. You're going to make 3 to 4 times your average nightly rate of the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So we put as much energy and focus on that time frame, and then summer still performs well. Fall and spring, or you get a booking, it's great, but you're not going to clear that much revenue. And then a lot of times it can be a headache for the owners and for the guests if you're putting in a lot of traffic and it's a real low nightly rate.
Yeah.
So we'll focus in that 120 night stretch in the ski season. Our focus is always to try to fill up that calendar as much as we can, because it's it'd be if you owned a store and you can sell the jeans for $400, or you can wait and sell them for $25 in the summer. You want to sell every pair of jeans for $400.
Yes,
so it's every night you have available, you want to fill those, because if you can fill it early, you can build your calendar around your other reservations. Or if you're kind of waiting for, that kind of crazy high rate, you might get it once, but then you're going to have a week go unsold in January where it's it could have easily fetched a really good rate just because you were, kind of trying to get too much.
This to me was like when I was reading a note that Brad took on this topic when we were looking about like what we were going to talk about. This struck a chord because we manage higher end homes, and I think any company at whatever level of luxury or level of nightly rate that they're managing houses at, they're going to have like some homes that are on the higher end of the homes that they manage. And usually that homeowner, the homeowner who has the house that's like nicer than the other houses, they're going to have that idea most often, not always, but like most often they have that idea that like, well, my house should be getting this huge amount, right? Because it's so much better than all the
or
other
sometimes
houses.
they'll like base it off what they paid for it in the real estate price, which isn't that tangible.
Yes. When a homeowner starts telling us like, oh, well, I paid this much for this house, or, someone just offered me this much for, it's like, that is so cool and wonderful as the holder of that real estate and like your investment, like that's amazing. And I like, I wish that I was holding real estate that way too. But as it relates to vacation rentals, it doesn't hold that much water. And that's a hard thing to be able to explain to people. But I do think this concept, because we've dealt with this a lot, and I have to imagine other companies do too, or even just homeowners that are doing like STR and, managing their own home. It's like, okay, so in Park City, the example would be like during Sundance, my neighbors told me that 8 years ago, they got $15,000 a night during Sundance for their house. So I want mine to be $10,000 a night during Sundance because, that was a long time ago and I understand things change, but I mean, come on. And so, a homeowner will tell us that they really want to hold out for this really high nightly rate. And they're thinking that like, that's going to make up the difference. And then I think what you're saying is like, this is not always the right play, or usually, the bulk of the time, not the right play.
Yeah, typically, because then you're just going to have these larger chunks that you're too late to the market. Because then like we're all completely fly market. So a lot of times the price of the flights will, again, start to get too high where you just scare off anyone to come fill in your gaps. Because if it's $1,500 instead of $500 to get here from Atlanta or New York, you've lost that crowd because family of six, $9,000. No thanks. We do not want to fly for that much. So you lose that market. And then the other thing compared, like we book, I think, I don't have it in front of me, but I think we're about 10% ahead of the market like each year on what we sell for ski nights. So that's we're roughly 12 extra nights. So if even at $1,000, that's $12,000 we're making per property extra just by filling in those
filling
gaps.
In the gaps.
Because and then if you're locking it in 4 or 6 months in advance, then you have 150-day window to sell that gap instead of waiting for the last minute.
So to me, like the nugget here is the way to describe this to a homeowner. When a homeowner is telling you, I am going to set my basement price, like, right, I want the lowest price for this peak week to be, this amount of money. And, they're dead set that like, it's worth it to set that basement. I think what you're saying, and tell me if I'm getting this right, is like, it's better to be playing more to the actual market and what that threshold is. And, this can be a way to chalk a homeowner off that ledge of setting some arbitrary basement.
Yeah, it's sort of, be like, if you're selling a lot of things, you'd rather sell all 100 of those things at 90 cents, 95 cents on the dollar than magically thinking you can get all of it sold at exactly the price you want. And then like Park City, particularly, very crowded market. There's, I don't know, 6,000 rentals or so. So it's like, there's always going to be other competition. So it's not, I think maybe if you're on a small island, maybe you could whittle it down and you maybe are the last house available at Christmas and you can get that high rate. But so.
I think I hear people talking about this all the time. I listen to like so many podcasts that I probably drive my entire team insane because I listen to podcasts and then I send the links for those podcasts to my team, like in different sporadic groups, like, oh, you have to listen to this and you have to listen to this. And so one of the ones that I really like is the Steve Milo Straight Fire.
Okay.
I just feel like he tends to have like interesting points of view, which I love Brad because I feel like you always have like a differing point of view. And while like I don't know Steve Milo and I don't have like, I don't have like a friendship, I don't know him or anything. I feel like he does have interesting, different points of view. And while I don't always agree with them, like they're interesting to me. And so I know on one of his recent episodes, he was talking about the concept of like getting the pricing right. And like, do you wait too long to bring down the price and all of that? And I feel like that relates to this too, right? Like,
yes. Yeah. Cause it's like, if you're playing catch up, then a lot of other companies in town are also going to be playing catch up. So then all of you are slashing prices within like 30 days left before peak time, is that's a much harder place to be than if you're 6 months out and you're 90 cents on the dollar to everybody else. Like, you're able to book those 5 and 7 night stays, and you're locking in a lot of nights at a good rate.
So like, okay, I'm thinking of a couple homeowners that you and I both deal with. So like, just think of one of them. Like, what is the thing? Like, what's the wording you would say to them if they were like, okay, we're not getting the bookings that we wanted for this peak week, and we're willing to talk about pricing now. So what would you say, like, when you get that chance to get them to come off of that arbitrary basement price that's not helping their whole revenue
I mean, I
process?
think you can like start, if they're very resistant to like quick change, you can start around the edges, and because like we've had success growing like length of stay, so you can increase like your weekly, and we got stuff in Streamline, or we can do discounts start at night 12, things like that, or you phase out some fees, things like that. So those can help kind of drive that type of booking. And then a lot of times, most owners will like the longer term because there's a perception that there's less wear and tear.
Yes.
So that you can kind of start there, and then a lot of holidays, you explain to them, you know what, most people like to come after, they like to have Christmas at home and then come on the 26th or 27th. So let's try to have the first week at a lower price point.
Yeah.
So kind of try to balance it out. Because I think sometimes, if they're very new, there's going to be a lot of resistance.
Yeah, they have. Well, because I know like we run into this a lot because our homeowners tend to, well, almost all of them are like high net worth individuals, because the homes we manage are like $1 million up to, $50 million value. And so these people that own these homes, they have made so much money in their life, and they either, I'm generalizing, it's not the best thing to do, but like, generally they have built a company and sold it, or they work in investments, or they're attorneys. Like, that's a bulk of, right? That's a lot of them. And so I feel like when someone has been really successful in their field and they've made a lot of money, they now, not always, but like human nature tends to kind of guide you to think like, well, I know a lot about business. And so we do run into homeowners often that feel really strongly that they know how to price this better than us, because they have made more money and they have been more successful. So they want to help them to make more revenue. And so it could be really hard, I think, especially in the more luxury side of it. But I think on any level of vacation rental, when you're dealing with homeowners that have second and third homes, like, that's a person that's wealthy. So
and if the property's super unique, if they hand, kind of designed everything, I think condos can be easier in this regard.
Yeah.
Usually,
but like these, unique properties that people really put a lot of thought and effort into. And also the fact that they bought it with money because they have been successful. It's really hard to negotiate or to explain to them how this revenue management and pricing works, because they have this sort of internal understanding for themselves that like they know better. And I think that can make that whole discussion even harder.
And they might have made little pricing models in their head when they bought the house to be like, it's going to pencil out at this. And
So they definitely will be like, okay, as long as we keep the price to this is like what they were thinking during the real estate purchase. And so then they get into the reality of it. And not to mention the changing economy and changing market.
And then, like ski markets are super seasonal. So it's hard for them to understand, like, June 1st, you can't charge much. Like, we're begging people to come here.
Right. So I think that's really interesting. Okay. So hopefully there was a nugget there about, making sure that you're not missing out on those peak weeks because you're holding on to a basement that's too high, which in our case, a lot of times is because of a homeowner and setting an arbitrary basement. But I think that can happen. I hear like the discussion that I heard with Steve Milo was more like on a company level, that he was talking about how companies can kind of drop the ball in terms of watching their pricing closely enough. I think for us, we're small enough. We watch our pricing. Brad watches it, but usually those issues come up with like homeowner requests and stuff, right? Yeah. Okay. So hopefully that's a helpful nugget. I feel like it is. Okay. What do you want to do next?
I think only other thing on like the calendars, the other thing it can help the rest of your team if you're booking stuff earlier, because then it's like, if you're having to do intro calls, contracts, payments, if you can do all that, like for us, our busy season is December to March.
Yeah.
So if we can knock a lot of that stuff out in October and not have to do it in January, you're saving all that time. So then you can actually focus on the guest and not you're not worried about collecting the second payment and things like that. So
that's something that we only got good at more recently.
So that's helped, I think.
So you're talking about like sort of optimizing or creating efficiencies for collecting payment.
And just also getting people, like, instead of waiting till November, December to get people to book ski season, if you're booking them in June, July, August, we're slower in the office. So then we can give that attention to, people forget to sign their contracts. There's
Yeah.
because if you have a couple thousand reservations a year, each reservation is going to probably require 30 minutes of
Yeah.
kind of paperwork.
Yeah.
And so if you're offloading that to less busy time of year,
Yes.
it's freeing that up where you can just focus on the guests and
Yeah.
get through that busy time of year.
And I guess like that would have to do with in different markets and different companies, how they do business and what their booking window is.
Yeah, because there's some, I know like Hawaii and Florida, it's probably more year round. But
Yeah. Or like, because I know for Jackson Hole, it tends to be like a pretty long booking window, especially for like
Summer
the
too.
really, summer stays that are more expensive. A lot of times it's like a year out or 8 months out. Park City, I mean, we do get a lot of repeat booking that happens like before the guest even leaves or right after, which is more of like a year out. So I do think our market allows us to try and do more of that work in our off season to book reservations that are longer out. And I don't know, like I'm not sure in the Southeast if they have the opportunity to book a year out as often, but I would think
probably
there's
those
some
prime
opportunity.
summer weeks in the beach.
Yeah.
But then, I know there's like your Flagstaff, Sedona's, Fredericksburg, Texas.
Yeah.
Those are probably more weekend crowds. So that could be harder to do.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, you're totally right. Like to push the marketing and like you said earlier, like making sure your prices are where they need to be and not, some arbitrary high price point that's not going to get booked, making sure you're optimizing that during your off season so you can get those reservations and get that work done that the reservation takes to confirm before you're busy. Because for sure. Like for us, like once it's December, January, and we're probably like looking at booking for the summer, maybe in Jackson Hole and Sun Valley, it's like, it's a little crazier because we're so busy in-house. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. What else you got, Brad?
Let's see. And then we're probably kind of going against probably the grain a little bit. We're fairly strict on cancellation policy.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
So I think like we've found it beneficial because you tend to find a better clientele because if somebody's willing to just front that money 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not as much of a financial strain.
Yeah.
So the price is not as big of a deal.
Like someone that like understands at the time of booking that there's no cancellation. Yeah. No, I agree. This is a like hot button for sure. Because so wait, explain our cancellation policy.
So if it's more than 2 months out, they're on the hook for 25% of the reservation value. Inside of 60 days, no refunds, full amount.
Yeah. So when you book, you're gonna definitely, if you're booking more than 2 months out with Abode, if you're booking a stay with Abode Luxury Rentals in any of our markets, if you're booking more than 2 months out, which the majority of our bookings are, then you're losing 25%, right? Like there's 25% that you can't get back. So it's not that it's non-refundable. It's just that there's a 25%.
Yes, gift penalty.
Yeah. And then within 60 days of the arrival date, there's no refund, which is really strict. I think our policies on cancellation are probably on the very far end of the strict side of cancellation policies. But we have to be that way because our markets are mostly ski markets, so very weather dependent. And so we can't have people like canceling their stay because they don't think the snow is enough, which comes up. Like people still try to do that.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure like our team in Jackson was saying a lot of the hotels saw really high cancellation last year because Jackson had a really slow start to winter.
Yeah.
So it's like we would be in that boat if we had a 30-day cancellation window.
Yeah. So we like learned that in the very beginning. And when Rob and I started this, and really it was Rob that like came up with these rules in the beginning. And he was good, I think, about making these strict cancellation policies. I don't think they were this strict in the very beginning, but we learned pretty quickly we had to be careful. And so wait, what was the nugget that we're getting from this here?
So I think that you're locking in typically a better quality guest. You're able to do that so far in advance. And then the other end, it's saving a lot of headache because owners aren't asking about why did the calendar open up for March and those types of things. You avoid that. And then our sales agents can then focus on selling and not managing cancellations.
Yeah.
So it frees up a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely like one of those things that I think in the vacation rental industry for a company owner, if you're in a market where there tends to be more flexible cancellation policies, like I would think like the Southeast sort of, this would be really scary, I think, to like start to think about having stricter cancellation policies and how it could actually help your business. Because I think that there's kind of a consensus, and especially coming from like Airbnb, who's like trying to, always support the guest in their cancellations. It seems like if I owned a company in the Southeast and, a lot of my competitors had more lenient cancellation policies, I think it would be like a scary thing to think about, like, okay, we should make ours more strict. But I feel like there is a lot of strength there because like what Brad said is, obviously, yes, some people won't book if you have a strict cancellation policy. But do you want that person to book? Because if they're only booking because they see that you have a lenient cancellation policy, then there's some percentage of risk that they're going to cancel and you're going to have to give them their money back, which you want to avoid.
Even on the high end, if you have a flexible cancellation policy, you could theoretically book Big Sky, Jackson, Park City, and then come January, who has the best snow, cancel the other 2 reservations.
For sure, people talk about
that can be like they can lock in those places. So that's you run the risk with that.
Yeah, I mean, so I will say, I think being on the high end, like the luxury, high price point side of vacation rentals, we really are forced to have stricter cancellation policies because of what Brad just said, and because also like one reservation could be 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever, and so you really can't risk having that just pop right off your books last minute.
Yeah, I think if you had really interchangeable properties, like if there's 1 and 2 bedroom condo building, it probably could be easier.
I mean, that's why hotels have more flexible cancellation. But I do think it's something for companies that are maybe not necessarily in the high nightly rate area of the industry, or they're not, maybe they're somewhere where the nightly rates are, just less, or the trend is to have more lenient cancellation policies. It is something to think about and just maybe to do a little math and like kind of noodle on. And I think that's a nugget here. That's like, look at the risk versus the reward. Like, yes, the reward is that if you have a lenient cancellation policy, potentially more people are going to book those reservations. But they also are going to maybe potentially cancel them more readily. And so where do you net out? Are you really better or not?
And if you're building your rates around your reservations, if you start to get these blanks, then it's like, oh, we built the back end of Christmas to be cheaper because that person was going to check out on the 31st. But then that goes away if that person cancels.
Yeah, because it booked and then it canceled. Then it had to rebook late. Yeah.
Or and then if the economy tanks ever, then it's like all those people just pull out of those reservations.
Yeah. And I think, that in our industry, there's always that fear because obviously the economy is always changing and our industry is always changing and travel is because of whatever, like illnesses or terrorism or whatever. And so I think any time that we can have more stability in the reservations that we are getting, it's like that as a company owner or someone working at one of these companies, like that is a lot of security that you could find that I think could just like help you feel better in your business every day, because it is kind of a scary thing to think about, especially those of us that were here before COVID and the feeling that was there of like when everything stopped and you're like, oh my God. And, from our standpoint, we did pay out refunds, here and there for people. We weren't totally strict with COVID, but we were more strict than most. And so we were able to retain some revenue to get us through those slower months to when things bounced back. And so that's another thing to be said about a stricter cancellation policy, because a lot of people got, as we know, just like completely, ruined with that. Okay, I wrote down in my notes this Motel 6 note, but I can't remember what it is.
So this is a common in Jackson Hole. So it's gone away a little bit, but summertime, like the Motel 6 in Jackson Hole, which I think it's changed names now, but Super 8 is also the same.
Yeah.
They'll sometimes go for like $500 a night in the summer. So then somebody that's got the 2 or 3 bedroom cabin is like, why isn't my place going for, if I've got 3 bedrooms, it should be at least $1,500 a night.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that misunderstanding where it's like, you can stay there for 1 night.
Right.
We don't let that happen.
Yes.
They don't have to pay a cleaning fee.
Yeah.
They might already be like almost sold out. So they're like, we really don't want to give up this room because we probably need it as a backup.
Yes.
And so there's like, they're playing a totally different game. And then those owners never come back. Like I looked today and it's like the Super 8 Christmas week in Jackson is like $80 a night. So it's like, they're not then asking, correct the rates to go down, so it's a different, kind of apples to oranges thing.
So the hotel comparison is like a constant. And I don't know if other companies, like if anyone ever listens to or watches this episode, and potentially no one will, I don't know. But if someone does, and if you have an inkling, like you should write us a note. Like we don't have a website, okay, yet, but we have LinkedIn. So someone write us a note, because I am totally wondering if other companies get this as much as we do. Because we get it, like Brad said, on the Motel 6 side. So for instance, like he said, there's a homeowner, they look online, they like arbitrarily just pick a day of our meeting. They go online that day and they look up the Motel 6 and they look up how much a 1 bedroom, like a room is. And then they do the math, right? Well, the Motel 6, like Brad said, well, it's $500 a night and my house has 4 bedrooms. So, it should be $2,000 a night if we're going to even be in parity with the Motel 6, right? Or on the other end of the spectrum, they'll say, the Four
Seasons.
Yeah, the Four Seasons is, well, I don't know. It depends what time of year, but let's say the Four Seasons is $3,000 a night.
Mm-hmm.
It's $3,000 a night, and I have 10 bedrooms, right? So it's like they want that math to work, and it's like that doesn't work. And I think this is a great nugget about what Brad is saying here, which is to be able to remind the homeowner. And I feel like I've done this a little, but not as good as you, to be able to say, like, number one, hotel rates fluctuate wildly. I mean, ours do too. And if you're doing good revenue management, you are playing with your rates all the time, right? Whether you're using software or you're doing it manually like Brad does. But yes, our rates fluctuate, but not like a hotel. Like, and a hotel has all these other things in play where, like what Brad said, they might be putting their rates up high because they don't want any other rooms to book, because they need extra rooms, because they know they're going to have some issues. So like they may be literally pricing. Sometimes when you go and look at hotels, the rates will be insanely high. And
or
of course,
in Park City, they'll do a lot of summer conferences.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then the hotel will be randomly sold out, and every other hotel in town is cheap, but then they'll hone in on the one across the street from their place. So then that's also one.
So that, like, someone will go online and say, like, a homeowner would go online and say, I don't know, in Park City, Hotel
Stein
Park
Eriksen
City or Stein Eriksen, their rates are $2,000 a night, and they're completely sold out. So why is my rate $2,000 a night, and I have 5 bedrooms for the same time period? And it's like, okay, first of all, the corporation that bought that whole hotel out,
paying $220 a night.
Yeah, they probably are paying a tiny reduced rate because they bought the whole thing, and the rate's showing high because maybe there's like 2 rooms left that, like, again, they don't want those to book because they're going to need them as backup. And yes, you see it as sold out, but that doesn't mean there's all this demand. That means there was one corporate entity that bought out all those rooms. And so there's like so many examples of this.
And then I know, like, in our market, I think there's St. Regis is Marriott affiliated. So it's a relatively easy hotel. If people have their Marriott points, they cash those in. So it's like they're filling up on people that aren't even paying directly with cash. So it's like, it's a totally different animal.
Yeah. So like homeowners will see occupancy at a hotel that they're using as a comparison point, and they'll say, like, well, their occupancy is so high and their rates are so high. And it's like, okay, but you're looking, like Brad said, at, potentially a certain percentage of those rooms, maybe 50% or 40 or whatever, that were booked with Marriott points. So it's like those people weren't actually spending the money on that. And I think those conversations, it really does help to give those kind of bullet points of information to the homeowner, because when they're doing their research, they feel confident about the research they're doing. And I understand it because the numbers are there in black and white on the screen. It's like, here's the rate that's available. It's the same time frame, and they're sold out. So then when you compare that to your own house, it seems simple. But, being in the industry, we have to be able to provide them the additional context of, like, okay, yes, but let's take into consideration all these other factors. Because it's the same when, like, a homeowner will go online and say, I pulled a comp set of comparable properties, and it looks like they're all way more expensive than my house. And so why is that? And they're not even available. Right. And so then what's the backup on that? Because I know you know the scenario.
I mean, typically, if it's like, say, they're looking at Christmas rates and it's November, what's left on the market is left on the market because it's way too expensive.
Right.
And then you look at if it's like a VRBO listing and it's got one review, and then VRBO, the way they put their listings, you can tell chronologically when it was put on the market. So it could be a 3 or 4 year old listing with one review. So it's probably that they're just always overpriced.
Yeah,
so
and they're not booking.
Their comps are looking at all the people trying to sell for doubles.
And they're saying, oh, it's not even available. It's already booked. And it's like, well, it might not be available because they blocked the homeowner blocked the calendar. And so, like, you go online, and again, because we're in the higher end of the industry, this is the way this happens for us. And I have to imagine it happens a little differently for stuff that's more like $300 to $500 a night. But this has happened for so many years. And I feel like it's only in the last like 5 years that we've gotten really good at talking to homeowners about this topic and really being able to dive into the background info, which is like, if you go online and you look at a certain date range and you're looking at properties in a certain price point in your area, you may see that there are properties that are listed for a very high price point and they may show as unavailable. But this does not mean that they're actually booking for that rate. That just means that potentially the homeowner just blocked the calendar.
We have some owners that are like they either sit out the winter or they sit out the summer. So then we have some that are occasionally like their rates are double, triple in the summer because they're like, we don't want to rent it in the summer.
Yeah.
But they'll kind of still keep it open for the strip. So you might be looking at that too.
Yes. Yeah. So like Brad's talking about like a homeowner that says, I don't want to rent in the summer unless it's some certain arbitrary basement that they set that's too high. Right. So maybe their place should rent for $2,000 a night in the summer, but they're putting it at $5,000 because they don't think it's worth it at $2,000. Right. And so then another homeowner who's with another company could be going online and saying, look at this property, look at this comparable property. It's listed for $5,000 a night and it's just like mine. And, it's like, but that's because we put that there to not, because they only want to book at this arbitrary basement, which it does change then the homeowner's perception of like what is real in terms of comparable or appropriate rates. And it makes it really hard. And I don't know if there's like, is there any way around that, like logically to be able to pull data to like sift that out, except for just the digging into it and finding out kind of.
I mean, you can't like pin down a neighborhood, but like key data, they're only showing stuff that's actually booked. So you could filter 6-bedroom with a hot tub with, and you're not going to get exact, but you can be like,
yeah,
stuff's booking at 1,800
and
your 5,000 night is probably going to miss the mark.
Yeah.
So
that's the play is I think, right. To pull the key data info to be able to show the homeowner what actually booked and like what the rates are in the timeframes that actually booked. And then you could compare that against what they're seeing on VRBO, Airbnb, and they're considering as their comp set, which may not be what actually booked. I think that could be the play, right? To compare that way, which I think we've done before.
And then on the really high end, it's like you have to remind them, it's like the person's booking a ski and ski out property. They like Deer Valley, but they'll probably also ski in Wyoming or Colorado.
Right.
So it's like, if there's 20 available in Colorado, it's like they're going to book that one.
Yeah. Because like, that's another thing with our high end of the market means that people have more access to more flights. They're not like as price sensitive. So there's not like, whereas I think a drive-to market, it's more like what is within the driving range.
Yeah, so you'll see that in leads where it's like, we ended up booking Big Sky. Yeah. They'll just reply back, something like that. So they want to come here, but they're open to other places.
I think because we're on the higher end of the market and we have these high nightly rates, I do think sometimes when people hear me talking about what we do, they might be like, whatever, that has nothing to do with me because that's like so far off from our price point. But it's like, yeah, we have these higher nightly rates, which is great. But it does also set us into this like negative territory, meaning that our potential guests have all this freedom to go wherever they want and to make these decisions like it doesn't matter. And so then, it's harder for us to capture those people unless we capture them at the right time with the right price point, because if we don't, they're flitting off somewhere else and they don't have two thoughts about it. So I think that's really interesting. Okay. So the nugget is when you're talking to homeowners and they're talking about certain price points and they're comparing, let's say, to hotels, what's the nugget?
I would say on the low end hotels.
Yeah.
Where is that hotel priced when there's not demand?
Yes.
If it's $60 a night, then it's like they're pricing because it's like they're basically sold out.
Yes.
And then on the high end, it's like remind them, Four Seasons is going to have room service. They're going to have an on-site restaurant. There's things that we're not going to be able to offer in our like basket of goods. And so that's something those places are going to have. And then they'll also have flexible cancellation.
Right.
And 1-night stays, 2-night stays. And we're not going to do that.
To me, I think the part to focus on is that flexible cancellation. I do feel like from the very beginning when we started Abode, and I think other companies think about this too, because it has to do with that whole amenities arms race that everyone's talking about. But even from when we first started, we really wanted to be able to offer the guests and homeowners hotel-like experience at the house. So we do a lot of like ski gear delivery, private chef service. We tried to think of like, what do you get in a hotel? You get a spa, so we could have like in-home massage. You get restaurants. We can bring a chef to the house. You get, in a ski location, you probably have like a ski in, ski out area at the hotel, or at the very least, like a ski locker area. So we try to, do the ski gear delivery. So we try to replicate what's in the hotel. But I think the thing that we will never replicate, we don't want to, is that flexible cancellation policy. And I think that's a great point with homeowners, because you can be like, look, there's this rate that's a difference because the hotel knows they're going to book a bunch of people and they're going to get, a bunch of cancellations. And, we're not going to do that. And so there is something to be said about a hotel setting a higher nightly rate for that one room because they do have that flexible cancellation. Yeah. And I think also then that other point that you brought up too, which is like the rates that you're seeing online for hotels have nothing to do with what those rooms that are booked actually booked for, because you don't know about what arrangements were made, what hotel points were used, all that stuff. And I think those are good key points, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did we miss any of these? Did we cover everything?
I mean, I think the only other one, like just when you're like looking for like third party softwares and things like that, is like a lot of, I feel like in the industry, it's pretty much everything is either charged at the like per listing. It's $10, $20 a month per listing, or the other arrangement is a percentage of nightly revenue.
Yeah, because we're like about to go to VRMA and talk to all these vendors, so at Abode, we use Streamline, we use Breezeway, we're getting on board with Send Squared,
Key Data. There's something else there.
I can't remember. Okay, those are our favorite ones. And so I don't remember. Do you know which ones of those are on a percentage?
Streamline loosely is on like integrated. Like if you book VRBO, Airbnb through Streamline, I believe it's a 0.5%. You're wrong, but
and Breezeway is a flat?
Breezeway is per listing. So it's
So but we do look at, I mean,
a lot of pricing software is percentage based.
I mean, honestly, if Brad, are you going to VRMA International? No,
Darm.
He's going to Darm. Yeah. Okay. So if you go to a conference and you see Brad, you should talk to him about software, because for years, he's like, no, don't talk to me about software. No. But for years, I've been getting all these emails. My husband and I get all the emails from all the different consultants, vendors, software, whatever. And a lot of time I would just forward it to Brad, because I'm like, he's going to understand this better than me. And then I would be like, and if he doesn't want to look at it, then he just won't. But if it's like even a little bit interesting to him, then that means it's interesting to me. And so I feel like because of that, Brad knows like so much about all these different softwares that are out there. So he's going to kill me if everyone starts, like everyone, the 2 people that are listening to the podcast.
Maybe third listener.
But if he starts getting people asking him, but he is an expert. Okay, but this was a note that he made that I think is I'm so glad we saved this for last. Thank you. Okay, so Brad was talking about how when you're working with like a vendor or software or whatever, and they're talking like how their fee is going to be 1% of your revenue, like what that really means. And this, like, it's like in the back of my brain, like I know it, but having him explain it this way, it's a perfect example of the Brad brain. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so rough, like just for this, say you're at a 70-30 split with your owners.
Yeah.
And so if your revenue's coming in and the pricing software is like, hey, we're only going to charge you 1% of your nightly revenue, no big deal. They're charging 1% on the entire basket of money. So you're only ever seeing 30 cents on every dollar come to your company.
Oh, wait, yeah. So we do either a 70-30 split or a 65-35, depending on which market. So that's what he's talking about, the 30% based on our 30% split.
Right. Sorry. So for that, for the money coming in, only 30 cents is ever going to go to a boat. So on a $1,000 reservation, $300.
Yes.
So the pricing company, though, they're going to pay they want you to just pay 1% on the whole thing. So that $1,000 is you're paying, or let's say 10,000, you're paying $100 on that. So then you're really out of your cut, you're paying 3 1/3%.
Yes.
Because it's the whole thing.
Yeah. So like this was such a good point, because it really does make sense. Because I will say, being about to go to a conference, when I meet people that have cool tools for us and they say it's 1%, I'm sort of like, okay, cool, that's no big deal. And even like so JJ King and Riley, I don't know if everyone knows them, but they recently helped us build concierge software, because we really needed concierge software. And we love Trip Around, and we tried Trip Around forever, but it didn't really work out for us, but it was so close. And JJ created something that worked, and I was like, yeah, we'll give you 1% of our 1% of our concierge revenue as like payment for building the software. And he was like, sweet, because we do a lot of concierge revenue. And this is so interesting. And, it's the same kind of with concierge revenue, because we basically make a 30% revenue, which is a whole other episode for us to explain how we do that. But we basically get a 30% markup on concierge services. And it's so true. So 1% is really like paying him 3.33% because we're not getting 100% of that revenue. A lot of it is going, in that case, to the vendor or the service provider. But like with someone who's looking at taking 1% of your rental revenue, it's so important to be able to
basically have to grow your business 4% to make up for that difference.
Yeah, which is a lot, especially if you're already doing like, if you have really high numbers for your annual revenue and you're saying 1%, but it's really 3.5%, like, whoa. And so I would have never been able to like verbalize that, but it makes perfect sense. So it's perfect timing. I mean, I feel like this episode's probably going to come out like somewhat, I don't know, a week or two maybe after VRMA International, but then before Darm, right? Because Darm's in December.
Yeah, right after things.
Okay, so it's perfect timing for people while they're like looking at software and making decisions. Remember this is my favorite nugget of this entire episode. That is when someone's looking at 1%, they're looking at charging you 1% of your revenue for their services, software, whatever. Now, this will depend on like what your split is. And I know in some markets it's 20% and some
which
markets,
then it's even more, you're giving more to the company.
Yeah. So think about that, right? So then if you're paying 1%, you're actually paying even more. The smaller that your split is, like this, however, like for us at 3.33 based on the 30% split, if your split's less than 30, you're paying really even more than we are, which is really something to consider. And like, why have I never heard someone break that down like that before? I don't know, but I think it's really helpful. Yeah. See, this is why Brad's a genius. For real. So yeah, I think these are so good. Okay. So we went through our nuggets here. I'll try and like recap a little, even though I feel like sometimes the stuff that Brad knows is like so far above my head that I'm literally like, wait, explain it to me again. But okay. So we talked about the amenity filter and talking with homeowners when they're making decisions about what kind of upgrades they want to do in their property, whether they're small or big upgrades, that it's really important to take into consideration and talk to your homeowner about taking into consideration what those filters are on the booking channels that are being made for amenities. Like, what are the things you're checking a box on as a potential guest, and focusing the spend on those things, because that's going to move the needle in terms of bookings. And then there was the approach with when you're talking to a homeowner and they're setting a basement on their price point, that, you really want to, what I'm making sure here, that we wanted to be able to have the right ways to talk to the homeowner about what are the factors that go into that basement and how it affects their overall revenue. So basically how an inflated nightly rate during a peak season, how that can really affect their revenue overall if they're going to wait too long and end up bringing that down later. And then, is that right?
And then just like not like focusing just on those peak days. Because if you have 20 or 30 days at like, say, in our, like above average revenue, like ski season revenue, if you're making $1,500 a night, that adds up really quickly.
Yeah.
And so it's like people sometimes forget about like January and February in our ski markets is like a lot of times when you're making the money, and it's like,
yes,
Christmas is great, but it's 7 days.
Yeah.
So it's
true. Yeah. And we talked about the concept of comparing to hotels and how to talk to homeowners about like, when they're saying, oh, this really cheap hotel, like comparing it, or this really expensive hotel, and how to, explain to them the differences and why those nightly rates and availability might look the way they do online, but what that really translates into reality. We talked about the strict cancellation policy and how like the security behind that, and also being able to balance out, getting guests that are going to be okay with a strict cancellation policy, because that means you have more security in those bookings, because those people clearly are not going to try and cancel most of the time. And then my favorite one, then making sure when you're talking to potential companies that you're going to work with and they're going to charge you a fee, taking into account what 1% of that revenue that they're talking about means, and considering what that means with your split. I think that's huge. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
this might be the juiciest, sauciest, most nuggety episode that we've done yet.
No, thanks for the interview.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's funny because I'm harassing everyone on our team to be on the podcast and record. And most of them are like, no, thank you. And I'm like, no, please, it's going to be great. And so I feel like this is not Brad's favorite thing, but you did really good. So thank you. Thanks for agreeing to play along with me. And all right. And everyone else, all of the millions of people that are listening to this podcast, or one or none, whatever. Thanks for listening. And we'll have another good episode soon.